Blood trickled down Dr. Alexandria Carter's face as Officer Wilson slammed her against the cruiser. "Please," she whispered, "my ID is in my purse." Another officer laughed. Little did they know tomorrow she would be reviewing their personnel files as their new police commissioner. Before we dive into this shocking story of justice and accountability, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button if you've ever witnessed or experienced racial profiling, and subscribe to follow more powerful stories that expose the truth about systemic injustice. Now let's rewind to see how this explosive confrontation began. Detective Alexandria Alex Carter navigated her sedan through the rain-slicked streets of Westbrook, her mind still processing the monumental news. At 39, she had just accepted the position as the city's first black female police commissioner, a role she'd worked toward her entire career. The mayor's words still echoed in her mind. "Keep this confidential until tomorrow's announcement. We want to control the narrative." She understood the politics. Westbrook, a mid-sized city with approximately 200,000 residents, had a long history of racial tensions that had only intensified in recent years. Alex had grown up here, left for education and career advancement, and now returned with purpose. The digital clock on her dashboard read 9:35 as she pulled into Greenfield Heights, an affluent neighborhood where minimalist modern homes stood behind manicured lawns. She needed milk and stopped at Jensen's convenience store, a brightly lit establishment that catered to the area's wealthy residents. Inside, Alex grabbed a few items, noticing the sideways glances from the elderly white woman at the counter, purchasing lottery tickets. She thought nothing of it until she exited the store and spotted the police cruiser pulling sharply into the parking lot, lights flashing but no siren. Officers James Wilson and Trevor Brooks emerged, their postures immediately aggressive. Wilson, a stocky white man of 42, with a military-style haircut, approached with his hand resting on his holster. "What's your business here?" he demanded, not bothering with any greeting. Alex, dressed in jeans and a Howard University sweatshirt, replied calmly, "Just picking up a few things." "Is there a problem?" Brooks, 38, with sandy brown hair and cold blue eyes, circled behind her. "We got a call about a suspicious person." Alex recognized the scenario immediately. She'd written her doctoral dissertation on racial profiling in law enforcement. "I'm just shopping. I live nearby." When she moved to retrieve her wallet from her purse, Wilson barked, "Hands where I can see them." Alex froze, years of trained instinct kicking in. "Officer, I'm reaching for my identification." Wilson stepped closer, invading her personal space. "You people always have an excuse for being where you don't belong." The slur wasn't subtle. Alex maintained her composure. "I'm going to reach for my ID very slowly." Wilson didn't wait. He grabbed her arm, roughly twisting it behind her back. "You're being uncooperative." The pain shot through her shoulder as he slammed her against the patrol car. Alex felt the cold metal against her cheek, then the warm trickle of blood from where her skin split on impact. Brooks laughed, a short, ugly sound. "Should have stayed in your own neighborhood." A young man across the parking lot had his phone out recording. Alex saw him and felt a complicated mix of emotions. Evidence was good, but she hated becoming another viral video of police brutality. "My identification is in my purse," she repeated, voice steady despite the pain. "I'm a resident." Wilson increased the pressure on her arm. "Sure you are. And I'm the police commissioner." The irony would become apparent later. Brooks searched her car without permission, methodically going through the glove compartment. Alex watched in the reflection of the cruiser window as he pulled something from his pocket and placed it in her vehicle. "Well, look what we found," he announced triumphantly, extracting a small bag of white powder that Alex had never seen before. "Possession with intent. That's a felony." The store's security camera pivoted silently above them, capturing everything. Alex calculated her options. Fighting physically would escalate the situation dangerously. Revealing her identity might create complications for tomorrow's announcement. "Officers, you're making a serious mistake," she said. "I am exercising my right to remain silent from this point forward, and I want my phone call." Wilson tightened the handcuffs until they bit into her wrists. "Rights. You'll get your rights down at the station." They loaded her into the back of the cruiser, Brooks, taking her purse and placing it in the front seat deliberately out of her reach. As they drove toward the precinct, they continued making derogatory comments, unaware that the woman they were transporting would soon be evaluating their performance conduct and future in law enforcement. The fluorescent lights at Westbrook's 3rd Precinct buzzed incessantly, casting a sickly glow over the processing area as officers Wilson and Brooks marched Alex through the station like a trophy. "Got another dealer from Greenfield Heights," Brooks announced loudly to the booking sergeant Michael Donovan, a balding man with 20 years on the force and a perpetual scowl. Donovan barely looked up from his computer, his fingers pecking methodically at the keyboard. "Name?" he asked, without making eye contact with Alex. Before she could answer, Wilson cut in. "Says her name is Alexandria Carter, probably fake." The disrespect was deliberate, designed to dehumanize and establish dominance. Alex remained composed, her training and experience, allowing her to observe and catalog every procedural violation for future reference. "I would like to make my phone call," she stated firmly, ignoring the blood that had dried on her cheek. Donovan snorted. "You'll get your call when we're good and ready. We've got real police work to do first." The booking process dragged on unnecessarily. Her belongings were inventoried without her witnessing the procedure. A clear violation of department policy. Her fingerprints were taken roughly, the officer pressing her fingers against the scanner with excessive force. Throughout it all, Alex maintained her dignity, refusing to give them the emotional reaction they were attempting to provoke. When they finally led her to a holding cell, Alex found herself sharing the space with a young black woman who couldn't have been more than 25. The woman looked up briefly as Alex entered, then returned to staring at the floor. After the officers left, silence hung between them for several minutes before the young woman spoke. "What'd they get you for?" Her voice was tired, resigned. "Allegedly possession with intent to distribute," Alex replied, taking a seat on the bench across from her. "They planted it in my car." The woman nodded, unsurprised. "I'm Tamika Johnson. Same thing happened to me this morning. Those same 2 officers." This caught Alex's attention. Wilson and Brooks. Tamika nodded again. "They're part of some special task force. Clean streets, they call it. More like no blacks allowed, if you ask me." Over the next hour, Tamika detailed her experience and others she knew about. The pattern was clear. Black people, entering wealthy neighborhoods, were routinely stopped, harassed, and often arrested on fabricated charges. The task force operated with impunity, their actions justified by wealthy residents' complaints about suspicious individuals. "My cousin got stopped 3 times in 1 week just driving to his job at the country club," Tamika explained. "Finally quit because it wasn't worth the hassle." Alex listened intently, gathering intelligence while strategically keeping her own identity ambiguous. Tamika had no idea she was speaking to the incoming police commissioner. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Officer Elena Rodriguez, a newer officer with less than 2 years on the force. Unlike her colleagues, Rodriguez showed subtle signs of discomfort with the situation. She avoided eye contact when speaking to the women, her voice softer than the other officers. "Carter, time for your call," she announced, unlocking the cell. As Rodriguez led her to the phone, Alex noticed the young officer's discreet glances at the bruises forming on her wrists from the overly tight handcuffs. "Those look painful," Rodriguez murmured quickly, looking away when Alex caught her eye. This momentary display of humanity confirmed Alex's assessment. Not everyone in the department was corrupt, just intimidated into compliance. At the phone, Alex dialed not her sister or attorney, as the officers might have expected, but Mayor Richard Bennett directly. Their conversation was brief. Richard Bennett speaking. "Mayor Bennett, this is Dr. Alexandria Carter." A pause. "Alexandria, where are you calling from?" The 3rd Precinct holding cell. "I've been arrested." The mayor's shock was audible. "What? That's impossible. What happened? I'd rather discuss details in person. Suffice to say, I've had an enlightening preview of the department's operations." Within 15 minutes, the station was thrown into confusion. The desk sergeant received a call that left him visibly shaken. Officers began whispering among themselves, casting curious glances toward the holding area. Alex was brought back to processing, where Donovan's demeanor had transformed from dismissive to nervously official. There seems to have been a misunderstanding, he stated stiffly, processing her release forms. You're free to go, Miss Carter. No charges will be filed. Alex took the opportunity to observe the station operations more thoroughly, noting officer names from badges, watching their interactions, and identifying who held actual authority versus official titles. She witnessed 2 more people of color being processed, both receiving the same dismissive treatment she had experienced. When Officer Rodriguez returned her belongings, Alex noticed the young officer had cleaned the blood from her purse strap, a small act of conscience. As she prepared to leave, Wilson and Brooks reappeared, their expressions, a mixture of confusion and lingering arrogance. Lucky break, Wilson muttered. Paperwork issue. Don't think this means anything. Brooks leaned closer, his voice low and threatening. And don't bother making trouble. Nobody cares about complaints from people like you. Alex met his gaze steadily. I'll keep that in mind, Officer Brooks. She committed his badge number to memory, along with every detail of his face. Tomorrow it would be etched with shock when he learned exactly who she was. Morning light streamed through the windows of City Hall as Alexandria Carter sat in the mayor's office, her composure intact, despite the visible bruise darkening her cheekbone and the stiffness in her shoulder from being slammed against the police cruiser. Mayor Richard Bennett paced anxiously while City Attorney Patricia Washington reviewed Alex's account of the previous night's events. This is unprecedented, Patricia said, looking up from her notes. You're telling me that the day before your official introduction as police commissioner, you were racially profiled, assaulted, falsely arrested, and had evidence planted on you by officers from your own department. Alex nodded, wincing slightly at the pain in her neck. That's exactly what happened. And from what I gathered in lockup, it's not an isolated incident. It's systematic. The mayor ran a hand through his silver hair. We should postpone the announcement, give you time to heal, maybe approach this differently. Alex's response was immediate and firm. Absolutely not. We proceed exactly as planned. She leaned forward, her dark eyes intense with purpose. What happened to me happens to countless citizens who don't have the power to fight back. The difference is, I can do something about it. Patricia looked concerned. You realize this creates complications. The optics, the potential lawsuits. The optics, Alex interrupted, are exactly what this department needs. Accountability starts today. Across town at the 3rd Precinct, officers, James Wilson and Trevor Brooks, prepared for what they'd been told was a mandatory department meeting to introduce the new commissioner. Another diversity hire, Wilson complained, adjusting his uniform in the locker room mirror. Some bureaucrat who's never worked a real beat. Brooks laughed, recalling the previous night. Like that woman we arrested, probably filing a complaint right now that'll go straight into the trash. Other officers joined in their laughter except for Elena Rodriguez, who quietly closed her locker and left without commenting. The department's main conference room filled with officers from all precincts, the atmosphere buzzing with speculation about their new boss. Chief Thomas Reynolds, a 30-year veteran with a reputation for maintaining the status quo, called for attention. Officers, as you know, after Commissioner Matthews' retirement, we conducted a nationwide search for his replacement. He cleared his throat, looking uncomfortable. The mayor and city council have selected Dr. Essence Tu Evanati, Alexandria Carter, who brings extensive experience in law enforcement and criminal justice reform. A door at the side of the room opened, and Alex walked in. Her stride was confident, her appearance impeccable in a tailored navy suit, but nothing could hide the bruise on her face or the small bandage near her temple. A collective gasp rippled through the room. In the 3rd row, Officer Wilson's face drained of color. Beside him, Brooks froze in horrified recognition. Alex's eyes met theirs briefly, before scanning the entire assembly. Good morning, she began, her voice clear and authoritative. Some of you I've had the pleasure of meeting already, though the circumstances were less than ideal. A nervous murmur passed through the crowd as officers turned to look at Wilson and Brooks, who seemed to be shrinking in their seats. For those wondering about my appearance this morning, Alex continued, gesturing to her injuries. I had an enlightening encounter with members of our department last night. An encounter that highlighted exactly why I accepted this position. She moved to the podium, her presence commanding the room. I believe in justice. Not just the kind that happens in courtrooms, but the kind that should happen on our streets every day. Justice that doesn't change based on a person's skin color or the neighborhood they're in. Alex outlined her vision for the department with clarity and conviction. She spoke about accountability, community trust, transparent procedures, and equal protection under the law. Throughout her address, Wilson and Brooks remained frozen in their seats, the implications of their actions beginning to dawn on them fully. "I know change is difficult," Alex concluded. "Some of you may resist it, others will embrace it. But make no mistake, change is coming to this department starting today." She thanked the officers and dismissed the General Assembly, adding Officers Wilson and Brooks, Sergeant Donovan, and Director Jenkins from Internal Affairs, please remain behind. The room emptied quickly, officers filing out with expressions ranging from intrigue to concern to outright fear. Marcus Jenkins, the Internal Affairs Director, approached Alex, immediately extending his hand. "Commissioner Carter, I had no idea about last night's incident." Alex accepted his handshake. "That's why we're having this conversation now, Director." Wilson, Brooks, and Donovan remained in their seats, looking like condemned men awaiting sentence. When the room cleared, Alex took a seat across from them, her posture relaxed but her gaze unwavering. "Gentlemen, I believe we have some unfinished business." Wilson spoke first, his voice strained with desperate diplomacy. "Commissioner, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Had we known who you were—" "That's precisely the problem, Officer Wilson." Alex cut him off. "Your treatment of me shouldn't have depended on my title. It should have been based on proper procedure and basic human dignity." Brooks attempted to justify their actions. "We received a call about a suspicious person. We were just following protocol." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Protocol includes planting evidence, excessive force, racial slurs." Fascinating interpretation of the manual, Officer Brooks. She turned to Donovan. "And I suppose denying a detainee their phone call for hours is also standard procedure." Sergeant, the men exchanged nervous glances. Alex opened a folder containing preliminary reports. "I have the bystander video from the parking lot. I have the convenience store security footage that clearly shows Officer Brooks planting evidence in my vehicle. And I have an excellent memory for every word spoken to me during my detention." The color drained further from their faces. "You're all fired," Wilson blurted, panic evident in his voice. Alex smiled slightly. "That would be easy, wouldn't it? Clean break, you play the victims of a vindictive new boss, and nothing really changes." She closed the folder. "No, gentlemen, you're going to experience something far more valuable: accountability through due process." She turned to Jenkins. "Director, I want a full investigation, transparent by the book. Review every arrest these officers have made in the past 5 years. Interview every person they've detained. Examine every complaint filed against them, including the ones that mysteriously disappeared." Jenkins nodded, understanding the magnitude of the task. "Yes, Commissioner." Alex stood, signaling the end of the meeting. "Until the investigation concludes, you're all on administrative leave, without pay." As they filed out, Alex called after them. "Oh, and officers. The woman in the cell with me last night, Tamika Johnson. All charges against her are to be dropped immediately, and I want her case file on my desk this afternoon." The door closed behind them, leaving Alex alone with Jenkins. "They won't go quietly," he warned. "No," she agreed. "They won't. That's counting on that." What happens when those who abuse power suddenly find themselves powerless? What would you do if you witnessed officers planting evidence like Brooks did? Comment number 1, if you think Alex should have fired them immediately, or number 2, if you agree with her approach of full investigation and transparency. Don't forget to hit that like button if you're shocked by the officer's behavior, and subscribe to follow Alex's journey toward justice. How far do you think the corruption extends in Westbrook? And what lengths will these officers go to protect themselves? Let's find out as our story continues. The news of Commissioner Carter's identity and the circumstances of her arrest spread through the Westbrook Police Department like wildfire, creating immediate and distinct battle lines. By midday, the third floor of headquarters had become a silent war zone, with officers either avoiding eye contact or offering Alex supportive nods as she toured the facilities. In her newly occupied office, Alex reviewed personnel files when a knock at her door revealed Chief Reynolds. "The department is talking about nothing else," he said, closing the door behind him. "You've certainly made an entrance." Alex gestured for him to sit. "Not the one I planned, but sometimes the most effective lessons are unscripted." Reynolds, a man who had navigated departmental politics for 3 decades, studied her with a calculating gaze. "Wilson and Brooks have friends here, powerful ones. This won't be easy." Alex met his assessment with unwavering determination. "I didn't take this job because it was easy, Chief." She pulled up a digital map of Westbrook on her monitor, highlighting arrest statistics by neighborhood and demographics. "Tell me about the Clean Streets Task Force." Reynolds shifted uncomfortably. "Special unit established 3 years ago. Focuses on quality of life issues in upscale neighborhoods." Alex turned the monitor toward him. "Interesting definition of quality of life. 87% of their arrests involve people of color in predominantly white neighborhoods. That doesn't strike you as problematic?" Before Reynolds could respond, Alex's phone rang with news that Lieutenant Gregory Parker requested a meeting. Minutes later, Parker entered her office with the confident stride of a man accustomed to getting his way. At 52, Parker had the physique of someone who still passed physical tests without effort and the weathered face of an officer who prided himself on street experience. "Commissioner." He began with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I wanted to personally welcome you and express my regret about last night's unfortunate incident." Alex observed his calculated performance, noting how he positioned himself in the room, slightly turned toward Reynolds, as if the chief were still the primary authority. "Thank you, Lieutenant. I appreciate your concern." Parker continued smoothly. "Wilson and Brooks are good officers who made a regrettable mistake. They've served with distinction on the Clean Streets Initiative, which has reduced reported crime in our most valuable neighborhoods by 30%. Alex caught the emphasis on reported and valuable. She maintained a neutral expression. "I'll certainly take their full record into account during the investigation." Parker's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Of course. We all support transparency. I just hope this isolated incident won't derail the effective community safety measures we've established." After Parker left, Reynolds exhaled slowly. "That's your opposition." Parker has connections throughout the city, from the police union to the business council. He was Matthew's right hand and expected the commissioner job himself. Alex processed this information, adding it to her mental map of departmental politics. "And where do you stand, Chief Reynolds?" The question hung between them, a test Reynolds clearly recognized. "I serve the department and the city," he answered carefully. "I'll support the commissioner's office, whoever occupies it." It wasn't loyalty, but it wasn't outright resistance either. Alex would take pragmatism over obstruction. Across town, Lieutenant Parker entered the marble lobby of Harrington Developments, bypassing security with a familiar nod and taking the private elevator to the top floor. Victor Harrington, 64, stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office, surveying the city like a feudal lord overlooking his domain. "This is an unexpected complication," Harrington said, without turning his reflection in the glass, showing a man whose immaculate silver hair and tailored suit projected old-money confidence. Having our new commissioner experience firsthand how we maintain neighborhood standards, Parker poured himself a drink from Harrington's bar without asking permission, their relationship long past such formalities. "She's dangerous. Smart, connected, and now with a personal vendetta." Harrington finally turned ice clinking in his own crystal tumbler. "The mayor should have consulted me before the appointment. Bennett's trying to score points with the East Side voters," Parker said dismissively. "Elections next year, and our arrangement." Harrington raised an eyebrow. Parker downed his drink. "She's already asking questions about clean streets, pulled the arrest demographics." Harrington's expression hardened. "Then we need to ensure Commissioner Carter reconsiders her reform agenda, or, better yet, finds her position untenable." The developer walked to his desk, pressing a button on his phone. "Janet, contact the board members of the Westbrook Community Foundation. We need an emergency meeting." Back at police headquarters, Alex was reviewing body camera footage when Officer Elena Rodriguez requested a moment of her time. The young officer entered nervously, closing the door before speaking in a hushed tone. "Commissioner, what I'm about to tell you could end my career." Alex gestured to a chair. "I appreciate your courage, Officer Rodriguez. Whatever you share stays between us until you say otherwise." Rodriguez took a deep breath. Clean streets isn't just about keeping wealthy neighborhoods safe. It's a paid service unofficially. Certain neighborhoods and businesses contribute to a community fund that ensures priority patrols. She pulled out a flash drive. This has the real operational guidelines, not the version in official records. It includes target quotas for suspicious person stops in specific areas. Alex accepted the drive, understanding the risk Rodriguez was taking. "Why are you showing me this?" Rodriguez looked down. "My brother was profiled by police when he was 16. Nothing's changed since then. Maybe you can actually make a difference." After Rodriguez left, Alex began methodically collecting data, building a comprehensive picture of the department's practices. She discovered that the Clean Streets Initiative coincided with property value increases in neighborhoods where enforcement was heaviest. Arrest rates for minor offenses showed stark racial disparities that couldn't be explained by any legitimate policing strategy. By the end of her first week, Alex had identified statistical patterns proving systematic targeting of black residents in upscale neighborhoods. She also noticed the resistance to her leadership taking shape. Information she requested arrived incomplete or late. Officers loyal to Parker began calling in sick on days they were assigned to areas outside their usual patrols. Patrol car maintenance suddenly required twice as long, reducing coverage in neighborhoods that actually needed police presence. During her second departmental meeting, Alex noticed several veteran officers openly checking their phones while she spoke. The message was clear: they didn't recognize her authority and wouldn't comply without a fight. That evening, as Alex worked late in her office, she received an unexpected visit from Chief Reynolds. "You should see this," he said, handing her a departmental memo. She hadn't authorized reassigning several officers who had been cooperating with her inquiries. The document bore her digital signature clearly forged. "It seems Lieutenant Parker is testing the boundaries," Alex observed, maintaining her composure despite her anger. Reynolds studied her reaction. "How do you want to handle it?" Alex smiled, a strategic decision to show confidence rather than frustration. "Let's let them think it worked." For now, she made a single call to the IT department, requesting a trace on all unauthorized access to her digital signature. The battle lines were drawn, and Alexandria Carter was prepared for war. But she also knew that real change would require more than just confronting individual officers. She needed to expose the entire corrupt system they served. The persistent autumn rain hammered against the windows of Alex's office as she reviewed another case file from the growing stack on her desk. Each folder contained a complaint against Officers Wilson Brooks or other members of the Clean Streets Task Force, most previously dismissed without investigation. The digital clock on her desk read 11:30 p.m., marking the third consecutive night she'd worked well past reasonable hours. She rolled her shoulders, trying to relieve the tension that had settled there permanently since taking office 2 weeks ago. A soft knock interrupted her concentration. Officer Rodriguez stood in the doorway, concern etched on her face. "Commissioner, your car." Alex followed her to the parking garage where her black sedan sat alone under flickering fluorescent lights. A piece of paper had been secured under the windshield wiper, sodden from the rain. Alex pulled on latex gloves before carefully removing it. The note contained a single sentence: "Race traitors get what they deserve." Written in block letters, the threat was accompanied by her home address, underlined 3 times. "I'll drive you home," Rodriguez offered, clearly disturbed by the implied threat. Alex photographed the note and bagged it as evidence. "That won't be necessary, but I would appreciate you filing this as an incident report." Rodriguez hesitated. "Ma'am, with respect, they know where you live." Alex placed the evidence bag in her briefcase. "They've always known, officer. That's the point they're making." The drive home gave Alex time to process the escalation. The resistance had been building steadily since her revelation. Initially, it was bureaucratic stonewalling, misfiled reports, lost evidence, meeting requests ignored. Now it had become personal. Her neighborhood was quiet when she arrived, the rain having driven most people indoors. Alex performed what had become a routine security check around her modest craftsman-style home before entering. Inside, she double-checked the new alarm system, before finally allowing her professional demeanor to fall away. She kicked off her shoes and massaged her temples, fighting a growing headache. Her phone chimed with a message from Jamie Washington, the department's cyber specialist, and one of the few technical officers willing to work openly with her. Security breach in the personnel database. Someone accessed your personal file at 4:15 p.m. from Lieutenant Parker's terminal, working on tracing other breaches. We'll update tomorrow. Stay safe. Alex sent a quick thanks, adding this information to her mental catalog of evidence. She had selected Washington specifically after learning the young tech expert had filed a discrimination complaint last year that was suspiciously lost after she reported inappropriate comments from Sergeant Donovan. The next morning, Alex arrived at headquarters to find several files missing from her office. The digital copies had also been deleted from the main server. Fortunately, she had anticipated such tactics and kept backups on a secure private server. Washington helped recover most of the deleted files and implemented additional security protocols for Alex's office systems. "They're getting desperate," Washington observed as she installed encryption software on Alex's computer. "Desperate people make mistakes," Alex replied, reviewing the recovered data. "That's what we're counting on." That evening, Alex's sister Vanessa called with concerns about suspicious vehicles near her home. "A patrol car has driven by Marcus's school 3 times today, stopping each time," Vanessa reported, fear evident in her voice. "He recognized one of the officers from your precinct." Alex's nephew Marcus was 16, the same age she'd been when she first experienced police harassment. "Pack a bag for both of you," she instructed. "You're staying with me for a while." When they arrived, Marcus's usually animated personality was subdued. At dinner, Alex gently prompted him about the patrol car. "Have you had problems with officers before today?" Marcus exchanged glances with his mother before answering. "Nothing I reported." The emphasis on reported told Alex everything. "Tell me," she insisted softly. Marcus set down his fork. 3 months ago, I was walking home from basketball practice. Patrol car pulled up, 2 officers, searched me on the sidewalk, said I matched a robbery suspect. He recounted the incident with the detached precision of someone who had replayed it countless times in his mind. "They found nothing but made me sit on the curb for 45 minutes while they ran my ID repeatedly." Vanessa added, "He came home with his backpack, emptied, books thrown on the ground. They claimed he might have been hiding something." The familiar pattern ignited Alex's determination. "Did you recognize the officers at your school today?" Marcus nodded. "One of them. Officer Phillips. He was there that day too." After Vanessa and Marcus went to bed, Alex worked in her home office, correlating Marcus's experience with similar reports. The timestamp on her computer read 1:15 a.m. when the sound of breaking glass shattered the night silence. Alex reacted instantly, moving to her nephew's room first. "Stay down away from the windows," she instructed, then checked on her sister. The front windows of her living room had been broken by brick-shaped objects wrapped in paper. Alex called dispatch while checking that her alarm had notified the security company. "This is Commissioner Carter. I need officers at my residence immediately." The responding patrol car took 20 minutes to arrive, despite the station being less than 5 minutes away. The officers, neither of whom Alex recognized, seemed deliberately unhurried as they took statements and collected evidence. "Probably just kids," one suggested dismissively. "We've had reports of vandalism in the area." Alex noted their badge numbers, adding them to her growing list. "I'd like the lab to process these bricks for fingerprints," she instructed, "and I want the response time for this call investigated." The next morning, Lieutenant Parker approached her in the hallway outside her office, his concerned expression transparently false. "I heard about the incident at your home, Commissioner." "Terrible business." His eyes assessed her reaction carefully. "Perhaps you're making enemies too quickly. Reform takes time, you know. You can't change a department's culture overnight." The implied threat hung in the air between them. Alex met his gaze steadily. "Thank you for your concern, Lieutenant. I'll take that under advisement." Inside her office, she found Chief Reynolds waiting, his expression troubled. "I heard about last night," he began. "The response time was unacceptable." Alex studied him, trying to determine his true position in the deepening conflict. "Do you have something for me?" Chief Reynolds hesitated, then placed a folder on her desk. "These are internal reports on evidence mishandling in the Narcotics Division, cases that coincide with Clean Street's operations." He pointed to several highlighted sections. "The same names keep appearing. It's not just Wilson and Brooks. The problem is bigger than I." He trailed off, the admission clearly difficult for him. "Then you realized, or than you were willing to acknowledge?" Alex asked pointedly. Reynolds met her eyes directly for the first time. Both, he admitted. "I told myself it was just aggressive policing, that the results justified the methods." Alex opened the folder, scanning the contents. "Why show me this now?" Reynolds straightened his shoulders. "Because bricks through your window means it's not just about policing anymore. It's about power. And I've been a cop long enough to know that when power is threatened, people get hurt." He moved toward the door, then paused. "I'm not on Parker's side in this, Commissioner. I just want you to know that." After he left, Alex sat back in her chair, processing this unexpected development. The chief's information confirmed her suspicions. The corruption wasn't limited to a few rogue officers or even a single unit. It was systemic, integrated into the department's operations at multiple levels. And now, with the threats becoming increasingly personal, she knew the opposition was growing desperate. That night, she installed security cameras around her home and began planning her next move. The evidence was mounting, but so were the risks. For every officer, like Rodriguez or Washington, willing to stand with her, there were others determined to protect the corrupt system that benefited them. Alex understood that the broken windows were just the beginning. The real question wasn't whether the opposition would escalate further, but how prepared she would be when they did. Morning sunlight streamed through the blinds of Alex's office as she pinned another document to the evidence board she'd established behind her desk, carefully hidden by a retractable screen when not in use. Red strings connected photographs, property records, arrest reports, and financial documents in an expanding web of corruption that reached far beyond the police department. 3 weeks into her tenure, as Commissioner, Alexandria Carter was uncovering a conspiracy that encompassed wealthy developers, city officials, and key figures in the justice system. The latest addition to her board was a property assessment report showing significant value increases in neighborhoods targeted by the Clean Streets initiative. Following the money, she murmured to herself, tracing the string from a high-end development to the spike in arrests of black residents in the surrounding area. A soft knock announced Jamie Washington, who entered with a flash drive and closed the door quickly behind her. "I found something," the young tech specialist said, her voice low despite the privacy of Alex's office. "I was tracking the special fund Lieutenant Parker oversees for Clean Street's operations." She connected the drive to Alex's secure computer. "The accounting is deliberately complicated, but there's a pattern of payments flowing to shell companies after successful property acquisitions by Harrington Developments." The screen displayed a complex flowchart of transactions. This one Blue Horizon Consulting received $50,000 2 days after 3 black families were arrested in the Lakeview district. The next week, those properties were purchased at below market value. Alex studied the data. "Can you connect Blue Horizon directly to Harrington?" Washington nodded. "That's the interesting part. It's registered to Thomas Harrington, Victor's son, but the paperwork was filed by Judge William Cartwright's former law firm. The pieces were fitting together. The same Judge Cartwright who signed off on the questionable warrants for those arrests." Washington smiled grimly. "Exactly. And he's denied every single misconduct complaint against Clean Street's officers that's crossed his bench." Alex added this information to her board, the conspiracy taking clearer shape. "We need to proceed carefully. These are powerful people with significant resources." Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Federal Building Coffee Shop, 2 p.m. Come alone. Matters of mutual interest." Alex recognized the protocols of a confidential contact. At precisely 2 p.m., she entered the bustling coffee shop in the Federal Building downtown, scanning the room until she noticed a woman in a charcoal suit sitting alone at a corner table. The woman didn't look up as Alex approached and sat down. "Commissioner Carter," she said quietly, still focused on her coffee. "I'm Agent Diane Foster, FBI. We should keep this brief." Foster slid a paper coffee cup toward Alex, who accepted it as cover for their meeting. "We've been investigating corruption in Westbrook for 18 months. Foster continued, her voice barely audible above the ambient noise. "White-collar crime division initially focused on real estate fraud. But we kept hitting roadblocks when police reports mysteriously changed or evidence disappeared." Alex maintained a casual posture while absorbing this information. "Why contact me now?" Foster finally looked up, her eyes assessing. "Because you're either the best thing that's happened to our investigation, or you're part of a more sophisticated cover-up I needed to see for myself." "And your conclusion?" Foster's expression remained neutral. "You've got bruises that match the description of a black woman assaulted by officers Wilson and Brooks the night before you took office. Either you're remarkably committed to your cover, or you're exactly what you appear to be, someone who experienced the corruption firsthand and has the power to do something about it." Alex sipped her coffee. "I'm building a case, but the opposition is substantial." Foster nodded. "Harrington isn't just a developer. His companies hold significant city contracts. The mayor himself has received campaign contributions through Harrington's network of donors." This explained Mayor Bennett's increasingly cautious support for Alex's reforms. "What about Judge Cartwright?" Alex asked. Foster's expression darkened. "Appointed to the bench 15 years ago after serving as Harrington's personal attorney. Since then, he's approved 98% of warrants requested for Clean Streets operations, compared to the average judge's 75%. He's also dismissed every civil rights complaint related to those arrests." Alex processed this information, adding it to her mental map. "We should pool resources." Foster hesitated. "My superiors are concerned about potential leaks in your department." "So am I," Alex admitted. "But I have people I trust." They arranged secure communication protocols before parting ways. The alliance formed, but fragile. That evening, Officer Rodriguez introduced Alex to Marcus King, a community activist who had been documenting police harassment cases for years. King, a former teacher turned advocate, had compiled hundreds of testimonies from residents targeted by Clean Streets officers. "Most people don't file official complaints," King explained in Alex's living room where they met for security reasons. "They're afraid of retaliation, or they don't believe anything will change." He opened a laptop containing his database. "But they tell their stories to someone who looks like them, someone they trust." The patterns in King's documentation matched Alex's findings: perfectly targeted harassment in specific neighborhoods coinciding with property acquisitions and development projects. "I've been sending this information to the previous commissioner for years," King said bitterly. "Never even got a response." Alex studied the faces in his database: citizens whose rights had been systematically violated. "That changes now, Mr. King. Your work may be the missing piece we need." The following day, Alex received a call from Mayor Bennett requesting an urgent meeting. In his office, the mayor's usual confident demeanor had been replaced by nervous energy. "Alexandria, we need to discuss your approach." He began pacing behind his desk. "I'm getting calls from concerned citizens, business leaders, campaign donors." Alex remained, seated, her posture deliberately relaxed. "You mean Victor Harrington and his associates are pressuring you?" Bennett stopped pacing, his surprise evident. "How did you?" "Because this isn't about policing methods, Richard. It's about money and power. Clean Streets isn't a law enforcement initiative. It's a property acquisition strategy." She laid out her evidence methodically, watching the mayor's expression shift from skepticism to concern. "This goes beyond a few corrupt officers," she concluded. "It's systematic exploitation using the police as enforcers." Bennett sank into his chair. "If this is true, the political fallout will be catastrophic. The human cost already has been," Alex countered. "People's lives have been destroyed to increase property values." Bennett's political calculations were visible on his face. "What do you need from me?" he finally asked. "For now, just don't interfere," Alex replied. And be prepared for significant revelations about people who've supported your administration. As Alex continued her investigation, she discovered that officers Wilson and Brooks had been specifically assigned to patrol the convenience store area after the owner complained about declining customer comfort due to increasing diversity in shoppers. The store owner, Gerald Jensen, had direct connections to the Westbrook Business Association, which received substantial funding from Harrington Developments. A pattern emerged of private businesses effectively using police as security against customers of color, all under the guise of community standards. When Alex confronted Chief Reynolds with this evidence, his reaction surprised her. "I knew about the business association's influence." He admitted, the weight of complicity heavy in his voice. "I told myself it was just community policing responding to merchant concerns." His eyes met hers directly. "I've been part of this system for 30 years, Commissioner. You start making small compromises, telling yourself it's for the greater good. Then one day you're looking at someone like you beaten and arrested for buying milk, and you can't recognize what you've become." The confession created a moment of truth for Reynolds, a potential turning point in his own complicity. "It's not too late to be on the right side of this," Chief Alex said. "I need allies who know the department from the inside." Reynolds nodded slowly. "What are you planning to do with all this evidence?" Alex laid out her strategy. "We build an airtight case identifying every link in the chain from patrol officers to Judge Cartwright and Harrington. We document the pattern of discriminatory enforcement and its connection to property acquisitions. And then we bring it all down at once." Reynolds considered this. "Parker and his allies won't go down without a fight. They've already shown they're willing to target you personally." "I'm counting on their desperation," Alex replied. "The more threatened they feel, the more mistakes they'll make." As Reynolds left her office, Alex turned back to her evidence board, the connections forming a clear picture of corruption that had shaped Westbrook for years. The question now wasn't whether she could expose the truth, but whether the city's power structures would allow that truth to matter. How deep does corruption go in your community? Have you ever witnessed police officers treating people differently based on their race or the neighborhood they're in? Comment number 1. If you believe most officers are good people working in a flawed system. Or number 2, if you think corruption like this is more common than we acknowledge. Hit that like button if you're inspired by Alex's determination to create change from within, and subscribe to follow her dangerous journey toward justice. Do you think Chief Reynolds' confession is genuine? Or is he playing both sides? And how far will Harrington and his allies go to protect their profitable arrangement? The battle lines are drawn as our story continues. The morning headlines of the Westbrook Daily Chronicle delivered the first salvo in Lieutenant Parker's counteroffensive new police commissioner's vendetta, reform, or revenge. The article, written by veteran journalist Frank Miller, portrayed Alex as an outsider pursuing a personal agenda based on a misunderstanding during her arrest. Using selective quotes from anonymous department sources, it questioned her objectivity and leadership capabilities. Alex read the piece calmly over her morning coffee, noting the strategic omissions, no mention of the planted evidence, the racial slurs, or the growing pattern of similar incidents throughout the city. The article was clearly sourced from Parker's faction, with just enough truth to make the distortions credible. Her phone rang as she finished reading. "I assume you've seen it," Mayor Bennett said without preamble. "How do you want to respond?" Alex had anticipated this move. "We don't, not directly. Engaging would only amplify their narrative." She could hear Bennett's hesitation. Alexandria public perception matters in these situations. The council is already asking questions. "Let them," she replied confidently. "I'm building a case based on evidence, not newspaper articles." After hanging up, Alex reviewed the morning's department updates, noting a disturbing pattern. Response times in predominantly black neighborhoods had increased by an average of 12 minutes compared to the previous month, while patrol presence in those same areas had intensified, resulting in more stops and citations for minor infractions. The message was clear. Parker was creating a no-win scenario designed to generate public criticism of her leadership from all sides. At headquarters, the tension was palpable. Officers divided themselves physically in the briefing room, with Parker's supporters clustering together, while those willing to work with Alex sat separately, risking ostracism from colleagues. Alex entered, acknowledging the division with a steady gaze before beginning her presentation. "I've reviewed last month's statistics," she stated, projecting charts on the screen. "Response times are down in Westridge and Lakeview, but up significantly in East Side and Pine Hills. Can anyone explain this discrepancy?" Silence met her question. Lieutenant Parker finally spoke his tone, reasonable but undermining. "Different neighborhoods present different challenges, Commissioner. Call volumes, traffic patterns, officer familiarity with the area. All factors in response efficiency." Alex nodded thoughtfully. "Interesting theory, Lieutenant. I've tasked Officer Washington with analyzing those specific factors." She clicked to the next slide. "Preliminary findings indicate that patrol routes were altered 2 weeks ago without proper authorization. Routes that had been stable for years suddenly changed." She looked directly at Parker. "Would you know anything about that?" Before he could respond, Alex continued. "I've reset all patrol routes to their previous configurations effective immediately. Any unauthorized changes will trigger an automatic review." The first skirmish won, Alex proceeded with the briefing, aware that more significant battles lay ahead. Later that morning, Officer Rodriguez informed her of an emergency city council session called to address community concerns about policing strategies. Alex arrived at City Hall to find the council chambers packed with citizens and media. Councilman Harold Winters, whose campaign had received substantial support from Harrington's network, led the questioning. "Commissioner Carter, we've received numerous complaints about inconsistent police presence and selective enforcement under your leadership." He began, referencing the same statistics Parker had manipulated. "How do you respond to concerns that your personal experience is clouding your professional judgment?" Alex recognized the trap defending herself would validate the premise of the question. Instead, she redirected. "I appreciate the council's concern for effective policing," she responded. "That's why I've initiated a comprehensive review of departmental practices, including response times and patrol patterns." She projected her own data on the chamber's screens. "These findings indicate systematic disparities in enforcement that predate my appointment by years. I'd be happy to provide the council with my complete analysis." The tactical shift forced Winters to either engage with her evidence or reveal his partisan motives. He chose to move to other questions, but the dynamic had been established. As Alex left the chamber, she noticed Victor Harrington observing from the back row, his expression calculating. That afternoon, a legal notice arrived from the police union. Officer Wilson had filed a countersuit claiming defamation and workplace harassment. The complaint alleged that Alex had singled him out based on their unfortunate misunderstanding and created a hostile work environment. The legal maneuver wasn't surprising, but its timing suggested coordination with the newspaper article and council meeting. A multi-pronged attack designed to undermine her authority and credibility. Returning to her office, Alex discovered another concerning development from Jamie Washington. "They've compromised your communications," the tech specialist reported, showing evidence of surveillance on Alex's official phones and email. "And based on these access patterns, I believe your home may be monitored as well." Instead of panic, Alex felt a surge of strategic clarity. "Perfect," she replied, surprising Washington. "Now we can control what information they receive." She outlined her plan to feed misinformation through compromised channels while conducting the real investigation through secure means. That evening, Alex gave an exclusive interview to Amara Johnson, a respected journalist from the Westbrook Voice, a publication serving the city's historically black communities. Unlike the Chronicle's hit piece, this interview allowed Alex to provide context for her reforms and preliminary findings without compromising the investigation. "The question isn't whether I experienced discrimination," she told Johnson. "The question is why such treatment has been normalized and institutionalized within our police department and who benefits from that system." The resulting article presented a starkly different narrative than Miller's, highlighting the statistical evidence of disparate treatment and the connection to property values in targeted neighborhoods. The following day, Alex implemented a strategic reorganization of patrol assignments, breaking up problematic units and creating new partnerships that crossed traditional loyalties. Parker and his allies protested immediately, citing officer safety concerns and disruption of effective teams. Alex responded by instituting transparent performance metrics for all patrols, making discrimination and selective enforcement more difficult to hide. The resistance escalated when evidence in a major drug trafficking case mysteriously disappeared from the property room, threatening to undermine a prosecution that predated Alex's appointment. Rather than becoming defensive, she used the crisis as an opportunity to implement new chain of custody procedures that would expose other irregularities throughout the system. This incident highlights the need for reform, she announced at an emergency press conference. When evidence handling is compromised, justice for all citizens is at risk. The new procedures required multiple documented checkpoints and video recording of all evidence, transfers making future tampering more difficult and traceable. The personal dimension of the conflict affected Alex's family as well. Her nephew Marcus faced increasing harassment at school from children of police officers who repeated slurs and accusations they'd heard at home. "They say you're trying to get good cops fired," he told her one evening, his expression troubled. "That you're making the city dangerous." Alex sat beside him on the porch swing of her home, the security cameras she'd installed tracking every movement on the street. "What do you think?" she asked gently. Marcus considered the question seriously. "I think they're scared of you. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're changing things they thought couldn't be changed." His insight beyond his 16 years strengthened her resolve. The most dangerous confrontation came 3 nights later. Alex received an urgent call dispatching her to a reported officer-down situation in Pine Hills. The location and circumstances triggered her suspicions immediately. Rather than responding alone, she contacted Chief Reynolds directly and arranged for trusted officers to accompany her, all wearing body cameras she had personally verified. When they arrived at the abandoned warehouse, they found no injured officer, but instead encountered several members of Parker's faction, visibly surprised by her backup. "Dispatch must have given us the wrong location," Officer Phillips claimed unconvincingly. "We got the same call." Alex maintained a professional demeanor while her team documented the scene and collected evidence, including radio transmissions that would later prove the call had been deliberately falsified to lure her into a potential ambush. The failed trap became key evidence of the conspiracy against her, strengthening her position while further discrediting her opponents. As the counter-offensive against her intensified, Alex recognized that the confrontation was approaching its inevitable climax. The forces arrayed against her were powerful and desperate, but they were also increasingly careless in their tactics. Each attack revealed more of the corrupt system she was determined to dismantle, bringing her closer to her ultimate goal of fundamental reform. The question was no longer whether she could expose the truth, but whether she could survive long enough to ensure that truth would matter. Rain lashed against the windows of the safe house where Alex had arranged to meet Officer Trevor Brooks. After weeks of mounting pressure, Brooks had contacted her through Officer Rodriguez, indicating his willingness to testify about departmental practices in exchange for consideration in his own case. The small apartment borrowed from a trusted friend outside the department had been swept for surveillance devices twice before Brooks's arrival. His face was haggard, eyes constantly darting toward the windows as lightning periodically illuminated the room. "They'll kill me for this," he stated flatly, hands trembling around his coffee mug. "Not figuratively. Actually kill me." Alex recorded their conversation with Brooks's explicit consent. For nearly 3 hours, he detailed the origins and operations of the Clean Streets Initiative, confirming everything Alex had pieced together, while adding crucial details only an insider could know. "It started small," Brooks explained. "Extra patrols in wealthy neighborhoods funded through this special community account. Then Harrington's people started giving us lists of areas of concern that aligned with properties they wanted to acquire." He described how Lieutenant Parker personally selected officers who would play ball, rewarding them with overtime choice assignments and occasional envelopes of cash labeled as community appreciation. Most damning were Brooks's admissions about evidence planting falsified reports and the explicit targeting of black residents in gentrifying neighborhoods. Parker told us it was about property values and community standards, but we all knew what that meant. Keep certain people out of certain areas. Alex maintained her professional demeanor, despite her personal history with Brooks. And the night you arrested me, Brooks couldn't meet her eyes. We got a call from Jensen himself. Said there was a suspicious person who was making customers uncomfortable. When we arrived and saw a black woman in casual clothes, we just followed the usual playbook. His testimony would be devastating if presented in court. They arranged for Brooks to provide a formal deposition the following morning, with federal prosecutors present. Alex left him in the protection of 2 FBI agents that Agent Foster had assigned. At 5:32 a.m., her secure phone rang. Brooks had never made it to his deposition. He had been found severely beaten in the department parking garage, barely alive with multiple fractures and internal bleeding. Alex rushed to Memorial Hospital where doctors had placed Brooks in a medically induced coma. In the waiting area, she found Agent Foster reviewing security footage on a laptop. Cameras in the garage were disabled, Foster reported grimly. But we have footage of a department vehicle entering and leaving during the time frame. The vehicle belonged to the pool assigned to Lieutenant Parker's division, though nothing conclusively tied Parker himself to the scene. The attack on Brooks fractured the department further. Officers who had remained neutral began choosing sides, recognizing the conflict had escalated beyond departmental politics to potential felony assault. Some who had supported Parker quietly approached Alex or Chief Reynolds, offering information in exchange for assurances they wouldn't be implicated in the more serious aspects of the conspiracy. Others doubled down on their resistance, becoming more openly hostile and obstructive. The community response intensified as well. News of Brooks's beating leaked to the press, connecting it to rumors of his cooperation with Alex's investigation. Community activist Marcus King organized a protest outside police headquarters, demanding accountability and transparency. The demonstration remained peaceful until officers loyal to Parker responded to a minor altercation with excessive force, deploying pepper spray against elderly protesters and roughly detaining several participants, including a local pastor. Video of the confrontation spread rapidly across social media, creating a public relations crisis that forced Mayor Bennett to finally take a definitive stand. This administration supports Commissioner Carter's reform efforts completely, he announced at an emergency press conference. The behavior displayed today is exactly why these reforms are necessary, and I am allocating additional resources to expedite her investigation. Bennett's political calculation was transparent. With public opinion turning decisively against Parker's faction, the mayor was protecting his own position, but his support provided Alex with critical resources and authority. Agent Foster moved quickly to secure federal indictments based on the evidence they had collected, focusing initially on civil rights violations that would allow for broader jurisdiction. "We need to move now," she told Alex. "After Brooks, it's clear they're willing to cross lines we didn't anticipate." The pressure mounted from all directions. Community leaders demanded immediate action against officers involved in the protest response. Honest officers sought protection from retaliation as they came forward with information. The corrupt faction grew increasingly dangerous as they recognized their vulnerability. Alex navigated these competing demands while maintaining focus on her ultimate goal, not just removing individual bad actors, but fundamentally transforming the department's culture and practices. The opportunity to demonstrate her leadership came unexpectedly when a major multi-vehicle accident on the interstate required an all-hands response. Alex personally took command of the operation, coordinating with fire and medical services while ensuring proper traffic management and victim assistance. Her calm competence during the crisis earned respect from previously skeptical officers who saw firsthand her commitment to public safety above political considerations. Behind the scenes, Alex worked with Jamie Washington to set a digital trap for whoever was accessing her communications. They created a fake evidence file with seemingly devastating information about Judge Cartwright's connection to Harrington's real estate deals, placing it where it would appear accidentally discoverable to someone monitoring her systems. The file contained hidden code that would trace back to any device that opened it. Within hours, the trap was triggered, and Washington traced the access to Judge Cartwright's personal laptop. This digital evidence provided the final connection needed to expose the full conspiracy, linking the judicial system directly to the corrupt enforcement practices. As federal prosecutors prepared indictments, Officer Wilson approached Alex through his attorney, offering full cooperation in exchange for reduced charges. "Parker and Harrington are the ones you want," his lawyer argued. "My client was just following orders within a corrupt system." Alex maintained her commitment to accountability at all levels. "Your client made choices, including the choice to assault me personally. Cooperation will be considered, but there must be consequences for his actions." The offer created a race among conspirators to be the first to secure a cooperation agreement, further fracturing their previously united front. Lieutenant Parker, recognizing his increasing isolation, made a desperate final attempt to reassert control. He called an unofficial meeting of officers still loyal to him, unaware that one attendee was recording the conversation for Alex. "Carter's going down," he assured them. "I have assurances from people above her pay grade that this whole investigation will be shut down within the week. Anyone who's cooperated with her will find themselves working traffic in the worst parts of town for the rest of their careers." The recording reached Alex within the hour, providing clear evidence of continued obstruction and retaliation against officers who cooperated with her investigation. She brought it immediately to Mayor Bennett, who finally recognized that his own political future was tied to the investigation's success rather than its suppression. "What do you need to finish this?" he asked simply. "Complete autonomy for the next 72 hours, Alex replied. "And your public support no matter who gets implicated." Bennett agreed, perhaps not fully comprehending how high the evidence would reach. For the next 3 days, Alex coordinated with Agent Foster and the district attorney's office, assembling the final pieces of their case against the entire network of corruption. They traced financial connections between Harrington's development company and various officials, documented the systematic pattern of discriminatory enforcement, and compiled testimony from dozens of officers and citizens affected by www.com. The Clean Streets Operation. As the indictments were finalized, Alex prepared for the most significant challenge of her career, dismantling a corrupt system while preserving the legitimate functions of law enforcement that the community depended on. The breaking point had been reached, and there would be no returning to the status quo. The only question was whether the new foundation she was preparing to build would be strong enough to support a truly just system. Morning sunlight illuminated the federal courthouse steps as United States Attorney Patricia Morris addressed the gathered press and citizens of Westbrook. "Today we announce indictments against 23 individuals on charges including civil rights violations, evidence tampering, conspiracy, witness intimidation, and corruption." The list she read included names that sent shockwaves through the city's power structure. Lieutenant Gregory Parker officers James Wilson and Trevor Brooks Sergeant Michael Donovan, Judge William Cartwright and developer Victor Harrington. The charges detailed decades of systematic discrimination, revealing how the Clean Streets Initiative had weaponized law enforcement to serve private financial interests at the expense of black residents' civil rights. Alexandria Carter stood silently behind Morris, her presence, a powerful symbol of the transformation underway. Her journey from victim to reformer had come full circle, as the very officers who had assaulted her now faced justice through a process she had helped build. The indictments represented not just accountability for her personal experience, but for hundreds of similar cases that had previously been ignored. In the weeks that followed, Alex implemented comprehensive departmental reforms that went far beyond removing corrupt individuals. Every officer was now required to wear body cameras with footage reviewed by a civilian oversight committee. Community review boards with actual authority to recommend disciplinary action were established in each district. Use of force policies were completely revised with mandatory de-escalation training and clear consequences for violations. Most significantly, Alex created new training programs addressing implicit bias and the history of policing in communities of color, making Westbrook a model for departments nationwide. Officer Elena Rodriguez, whose early cooperation had been crucial to the investigation, was promoted to lead a new community relations division focused on building trust between officers and residents. "This position isn't about public relations," Alex explained at Rodriguez's promotion ceremony. "It's about fundamental accountability to the people we serve." The convenience store where Alex had been profiled and arrested was transformed into a community policing center where officers and residents met regularly to discuss neighborhood concerns and build relationships outside of crisis situations. Store owner Gerald Jensen, facing his own legal issues for his role in discriminatory reporting, donated the property as part of his settlement agreement. Mayor Bennett, recognizing both the moral imperative and political advantages of successful reform, allocated significant funding for Alex's initiatives. His initial caution had evolved into enthusiastic support, as public opinion overwhelmingly favored the changes being implemented. Westbrook is becoming a national example of how policing can evolve to serve all citizens equally, he declared, at a budget hearing approving resources that would have been unimaginable months earlier. 6 months after the incident that had inadvertently launched her reform agenda, Alex presided over a new officer graduation ceremony. The class before her reflected a dramatic shift in recruitment priorities, with demographics much closer to the community they would serve. Their training had included extensive work with community members, particularly in neighborhoods that had previously experienced discriminatory policing. "Your badge is not a shield from accountability," Alex told the graduates. "It's a symbol of your commitment to justice for everyone, regardless of their appearance, address, or economic status. You're joining a department in transformation, and each of you will help determine whether that transformation succeeds." Among the audience sat Tamika Johnson, the young woman Alex had met during her night in lockup. Johnson now served on a citizen advisory committee that reviewed departmental policies and community complaints. Their shared experience had created a powerful partnership for change. "You kept your word," Johnson told Alex after the ceremony. "When you said things would be different, I didn't believe you. No one ever followed through before." Alex's nephew, Marcus, had found his own way to contribute through a youth police dialogue program that paired teenagers with officers for regular conversations about their experiences and perspectives. The program, initially met with skepticism from both sides, had become a model being adopted by other departments facing similar challenges. The most profound moment in Alex's journey came during a scheduled visit to the federal detention center where Officer Wilson awaited trial. He had requested the meeting, though his attorneys advised against it. Sitting across from him in the visitation room, Alex saw a man stripped of the power and arrogance that had defined him during their first encounter. "Why didn't you just fire me?" Wilson asked the question that had apparently haunted him. "When you walked into that conference room, you had the power. You could have ended my career on the spot." Alex studied him thoughtfully before responding. "Because this was never about you, Officer Wilson. It was about the system that created and protected officers like you. Firing you would have been easy, but another Wilson would have taken your place the next day." She leaned forward slightly. "True justice required addressing the entire structure of discrimination, not just punishing individuals. Ironically, the evidence from my own assault became the foundation for rebuilding a department focused on justice rather than power." Wilson seemed to struggle with this concept. "So I was just a means to an end." "No," Alex corrected him. "You were someone who made choices within a corrupt system. You're facing consequences for those specific choices. But the reforms happening now are addressing why those choices were not only possible, but rewarded for so long." As she left the detention center, Alex received a call from the police commissioner in a neighboring city requesting guidance on implementing similar reforms following their own departmental scandals. The influence of Westbrook's transformation was extending beyond its borders, creating the potential for regional change that might eventually reshape policing nationwide. That evening, Alex sat on her porch with her sister and nephew, watching the neighborhood children play in the early summer twilight. The security cameras remained a reminder of the threats she had faced, but the atmosphere had changed. Officers from the Reform Department drove by on regular patrol, exchanging friendly waves with residents who no longer viewed their presence with automatic suspicion. "Do you think it will last?" Vanessa asked, voicing the question that lingered despite their progress. Alex considered this carefully. "Lasting change isn't about a single victory," she finally answered. "It's about creating systems where justice becomes the path of least resistance rather than the exception." She watched as Marcus joined the younger children's basketball game, his confidence restored after months of healing. "We've laid the foundation. Building on it will be the work of generations." The transformation of Westbrook's police department had begun with a moment of injustice that could have remained just another statistic, another complaint filed and forgotten. Instead, it had become the catalyst for systemic change, proving that accountability was possible even in the most entrenched systems of power. For Alexandria Carter, the journey from victim to reformer had come at significant personal cost, but had created the opportunity for her city to begin healing decades of institutional harm. As darkness fell and fireflies began to illuminate the yard, Alex allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The work was far from complete, but for the first time in generations, justice in Westbrook was becoming a reality for all citizens, regardless of their race, wealth, or address. What would you do if you witnessed injustice in your community? Would you have the courage to stand up like Alexandria Carter did? This story reminds us that real change often begins with one person refusing to accept the status quo. If you found this story inspiring, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of justice and transformation. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that change is possible even in systems that seem permanently broken. Comment below with your own experiences of witnessing positive change in your community. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Alexandria's story. Remember, the most powerful force for justice is ordinary people doing extraordinary things when faced with injustice. Until next time, keep standing up for what's right. Alexandria Carter's journey teaches us that true change requires more than removing bad individuals. It demands transforming entire systems. Her story shows that justice isn't achieved through quick fixes or personal revenge, but through methodical exposure of corruption and rebuilding with accountability at the core. When faced with racial discrimination, she chose strategic reform over immediate retribution, understanding that lasting change comes from addressing root causes rather than symptoms. This story demonstrates how power structures protect themselves through intimidation, gaslighting, and bureaucratic resistance. Yet it also reveals their vulnerability when confronted with undeniable evidence and unwavering determination. The transformation of Westbrook proves that even deeply entrenched systems of discrimination can be dismantled when courageous individuals refuse to back down. Perhaps most importantly, Alexandria's approach shows that effective reform requires both insiders willing to risk their positions and outsiders who document injustice. The alliance between a police commissioner and community activists created change that neither could accomplish alone. The lesson is clear: confronting racial injustice requires patience, strategy, and resilience. By working methodically through proper channels while maintaining moral clarity, Alexandria created a template for reform that extends beyond individual accountability to systemic transformation. Her story reminds us that justice isn't simply punishing wrongdoers, but building systems where discrimination becomes the exception rather than the rule. Has racial discrimination affected your community? We often hear about these issues in the news, but Alexandria's story shows how one person can create real change when confronting systemic injustice. Have you ever witnessed someone standing up against discrimination like Alexandria did, or have you been in a situation where you needed to speak truth to power? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might inspire others to take action in their own communities. If this story of transformation and justice resonated with you, please hit that like button to help others find it too. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories about ordinary people creating extraordinary change in the face of injustice. And if you know someone struggling to believe that systems can change, share this video as a reminder that persistence and strategy can overcome even the most entrenched corruption. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Alexandria's powerful story. Remember, the path to justice begins with those brave enough to stand firm when facing wrongdoing. Until next time, keep holding power accountable and working toward a more just world for everyone.